We're taking you live now to Sydney, where New South Wales Police Commissioner Lanyon is speaking.
But it meant that no Form 1s under the Summary Offences Act were authorised. Effectively, that meant that protests were unauthorised and the protections that would normally be in place were not available. Those protections under the Summary Offences Act normally relate to obstructing traffic or people. Today, this afternoon, I have reviewed that declaration. I've decided that the holding of public assemblies for the next 14 days has the potential to cause fear and public safety issues. I have extended that declaration for 14 days. The declaration again relates to the 3 metropolitan policing areas. During that time, no Form 1s will be approved, again meaning that all public assemblies will be unauthorised. This is not about stopping free speech. It's about making sure that the community has time to feel safe. I ask for people to show respect. I ask for people to show courtesy. But most of all, I ask that people remain peaceful. We have spoken about this for 3 weeks. This was the most significant terrorist incident that we've had in New South Wales. It is right that the community has time to grieve and right that the community has time to mourn. This declaration today is about providing support to the community. It's about saying time is not now for any retribution. Time is now not about affecting public safety. And it's about saying we want the community to feel confident to move around safely. Again, I make this abundantly clear. This is not about stopping free speech. Public assemblies, when held peacefully, is still allowed. They are not prohibited. But no Form 1s will be approved. Therefore, those that act outside the Summary Offences Act are likely to have action taken against them. Where someone obstructs pedestrians or traffic, behaves in a way that is intimidating or harassing, or behaves in a manner that is likely to cause fear, they may be provided a move-along direction by police. It will be an offence if a person does not comply with that direction. Happy to take questions, ladies and gents.
What's the likelihood of this being extended another 14 days, and what would the impact be on Invasion Day rallies, which could be obstructing traffic and pedestrians?
Yeah, thank you. It's very premature to consider that. We waited till the end of the first 14 days to assess what the community fear was like, how the community attitude was, and the likelihood that the holding of public assemblies again would represent a community safety risk. We will again await that. This is really about providing that time. It's about time for the community to heal. It's about a time for community to feel safe. We will assess the need for a public safety declaration if that is required when we get closer to the end of this 14-day period.
What sort of factors do you take into consideration to make that assessment?
Yeah, certainly the feeling in the community. We are still going through funerals for those people that were tragically killed at Bondi. We know that there is a heightened tension in the community. We know that a number of sections of the community are feeling fear. And what we have seen over the past couple of days, obviously, is, again, external factors from overseas, bringing people out for public assemblies, and the potential for counter-protests, which could lead to a public safety incident.
It's unlikely that that feeling of fear will abate for some time. With that in mind, will you apply the assessment measures every 14 days?
The legislation applies for up to 19 days, but asks that I review the order every 14 days. I think it's really important to say that the factors that exist at the time are considered at the time, and I need to consider the community safety at that time, which is what we will do.
Since the previous declaration, has anything specific and further come to light that's motivated today's decision?
Nothing really, but it's still that heightened tension within the community. We're only several weeks out from what I said is the most significant terrorist incident in Australia, certainly in New South Wales. I think the community, quite rightly, over a period of time have felt fear and have been concerned particularly about some of the very public displays in our public assemblies. This declaration is about saying now is the time for calm, now is the time for showing respect, and it's about allowing the community to have peace.
What specifically do you think people are fearful of in these protests?
Oh, I don't think that's particularly difficult to assess. I mean, as I said, we've just had the worst terrorist incident in New South Wales. What I'm particularly concerned about, and it's for mine to make that declaration, is the potential for community safety, the potential for a counter-protest. We know that the heightened tension means that a number of people will be absolutely upset if people hold a public assembly at this time. I need to take into consideration whether that is valid in issuing this declaration, and I've done that.
Have you got current applications for Form 1s to be held, for protests and demonstrations to be held over the next 14 days that will now be rejected?
I believe,
What groups are they?
I believe that we have one. I don't have that in front of me at the moment, but the making of a declaration actually revokes that Form 1 application.
So no one can even apply? So you don't even have, people expressing interest to want to do a rally?
So the legislation says that a Form 1 cannot be approved, so if someone was to apply, it will not be approved for 14 days.
But I guess the question being, are people wanting to apply? As in, are there groups that do want to do a march in the next 14 days that are now finding out in this press conference that that's been rejected?
I believe that there is only one, as I said before. I don't have that details in front of me. What we will do, but is make sure we contact those organisers, explain the reason why that Form 1 is revoked. It had not been authorised and it will not be authorised in 14 days.
Should groups wish to have a counter-protest that is static, these rules then don't cover that. Is that a concern here?
Well, the legislation does not prohibit public assemblies. I think the Premier's been very clear on that. I've been very clear on that. I'm asking for people to show common sense. I'm asking for people to show respect at this time. A counter-protest that could result in a community impact or certainly violence is not something that anyone in the community wants to see, certainly not something that the police will tolerate. Again, I ask for respect.
There has been one protest planned for Hyde Park, which was about black deaths in custody for the family of David Dungay. And that's planned for the 18th, and so that's specifically critical of police. How can you as Commissioner make an independent decision on restricting protests that are specifically critical of police?
The legislation requires that I take into account the risk to community safety, and that's what I've done. I've indicated that we will work very closely with organisers. Where there is to be a peaceful assembly and where it complies with the legislation, we will work very closely.
In relation to Sunday's protest, a woman who was arrested wearing a globalised intifada jacket said officers told her that that was unlawful. Is that your understanding of the law and under which legislation?
I believe that she was arrested at the time because it was deemed that it was offensive. We're currently investigating that matter. At this time, no charges have been laid.
Is there a double standard given, the government's also looking at neo-Nazi chants and slogans? No one was arrested at that protest. Is there a double standard when it comes to policing protests?
Oh, no, there's not at all. I think we work very closely within the legislation. I have been clear at many previous press conferences to say the police must work within legislation, and that's what we do.
For the Venezuelan protests that happened recently that sort of went on without being disrupted by police, there was a reflection among some in the Venezuelan community that restrictions on protests was something that has happened in Venezuela under the Maduro regime, and Australia is a free and democratic country. How do you consider, the weight of important democratic rights against a decision like this?
Yeah, certainly. I think I've said this is not about stopping free speech. We're in extraordinary times. We saw the worst terrorist incident we've seen in New South Wales several weeks ago. This legislation has been passed to provide calm within the community. It's about saying this is not a time for protest. This is not about time for taking action. It's about the community seeking peace. This does not seek to stop free speech.
What consultation have you had with the Premier about today's decision?
I've had no consultation with the Premier about today's decision. The decision as to whether to issue a declaration and then to extend the declaration is mine as the Commissioner of Police.
Obviously, the Police Minister has the final approval. Is that chain of command accountable?
Yes, it is. So I have spoken to the Police Minister, who has given concurrence to my authorisation extension.
But the government sort of exert no influence on your decision to extend that?
No influence whatsoever. I meet with a panel of my executive, we discuss the current environment, we discuss the current threat, and then we make an independent decision. The legislation requires that I seek the concurrence of the Minister, which I have done.
When assessing the next 14 days, just following my previous question, will the Invasion Day rallies form a part of your assessment?
We'll look at the current environment as it is. We'll certainly look at the behaviour over the next 14 days. That is, if there are any unauthorised assemblies the way that they are. And we'll certainly look at where we are with the community. Again, This is about calm and respect. We will consider all of those factors. It is very premature to talk about what may happen post these 14 days. It's about allowing this authorisation to take effect.
Do you think, though, I know you said you don't want to speculate going forward, but if you do speculate going forward, do you realise that banning protests during that Australia Day period could be quite controversial?
I've just said I won't speculate about going forward. I think it's really important to say that I have made an authorisation extension this afternoon for 14 days. That was for a specific purpose to ensure community safety. I will again evaluate that authorisation as we get towards the end of this 14 days.
Some would argue that it actually makes those living less safe, particularly protesters who want to go and protest but they don't have the reassurance that they won't be treated badly by police officers. What do you say to those claims?
Sorry, can you just repeat that for me?
Yes, so some say that this would actually make people less safe in the sense that protesters who do form ones often do so they can see assurances that they won't be treated in negative ways by the police. What do you say to those claims?
The protesters, and if there was someone who wanted to have a peaceful assembly at the moment, this legislation does not prohibit that. I've indicated that we'll use these powers responsibly and transparently before, and that will be the case as it is at the moment. A person who is peaceful, having a small assembly or having an assembly for which there are no offences committed and people are not being offensive, threatening, harassing, have nothing to fear by that. The Premier has been very clear, I have been very clear, the legislation does not prohibit assemblies. But this is about saying to the broader community, this is not the time for division. It's about the time for peace and respect.
Well, the language by police, I mean, you've been very clear today about the extent of these laws. The language by police prior to this was very much saying along these events are unauthorised. Do you acknowledge that in that language has led to some confusion in the community, giving the impression that all protests are in fact banned?
We've tried to make that very clear. The word unauthorised is taken from the Summary Offences Act. So a protest cannot be authorised under the Summary Offences Act whilst this legislation and my authorisation is in place. They are the words of the legislation. What I have said is clearly they are not prohibited.
The behaviours that you described, obstructing pedestrians, obstructing traffic, that could also conceivably happen at a static protest, you know, if the police decide that it has happened. There's also a legal challenge which says that these laws effectively do ban protests. Is it as clear cut as you're making it out?
I think the Summary Offences Act, the protections and the reasons why Form 1 is a very valid process is because they do provide protections, particularly where there's a march and where there are pedestrians and where there are vehicles obstructed. That's not the case here, but if a person seeks to block a road, even with a static protest, they are able to have action taken against them under the Summary Offences Act. So we just ask for people to behave responsibly. It is very clear what I've said.
Do you have any metrics for success of these restrictions, and would you consider the last 14 days they have been a success?
I think I'm constantly looking at the community and working very closely with the community to understand the fear and the level of comfort within the community. My job is to ensure public safety as the Commissioner of Police, and as police we work very closely with the community. That's what we're aiming at. I would just ask that people work closely with police. As I said, this is not about stopping free speech. This is about saying show some respect, be calm at the moment. It's not a time for division. It's a time for the community to come together. What we saw at Bondi is something that we never want to see again, and this is saying about come together. This is a time for peace.
There's a constitutional challenge to these laws that's expected to be filed pretty soon. Will police participate in the defence of that challenge?
I'll wait until any action is taken, and obviously if there is a need for us, we will. But again, that's premature. As I'm aware at the moment, there has been no action taken.
Can I ask you about another incident as well? There was a critical incident declared after a man was pepper sprayed and suffered a medical episode. Was there any further details you could tell us about that medical episode?
I can't at the moment. As I understand, the man had been subject to pepper spray, reacted adversely to that. It's currently subject to a critical incident investigation. I wouldn't like to preempt what may have happened or certainly the outcome there. That is the purpose of the investigation. These investigations are undertaken with the oversight of the Law Enforcement Conduct Commission, and tragically, as a person has died, they'll also undertake oversight by the coroner.
Can you give us more details about the external factors from overseas bringing people out for public assemblies? Who's that reference to?
I think what we've seen during the week there, certainly with incidents in Venezuela and the fact that we had a protest this week by the Venezuelan community as a response to that, is the factors that I'm talking about at the moment.
And is it time to potentially review also seen a few other instances of being used against a 14-year-old boy at a protest last year. Is it time for police to review the use of OC spray?
In terms of this particular incident, it's very premature. The reason that we have a critical incident investigation is to look at that. There may well have been a medical condition that may have been exacerbated by that. OC spray is a non-lethal option that police have, and it's designed to make sure that we can police safely. As I said, tragically, a person has passed away. I think it's fair that we allow the process to go through now, investigate that matter and allow the coroner oversight.
Was the person that passed away the alleged offender in that situation?
I believe so.
Just to clarify on today's declaration, when does it start from? When does it finish?
It's from today and it will go for 14 days through to the 20th of January.
From 5 p.m. today until the...
No, it was actually made at 3:18 today, so it'll go to 3:18 on the 20th of January. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate it. Thank you.